Hi guys!
Hey, hello, how are you?
So today we're super excited to talk to you about how you can increase the quality of your decisions. And to share with you, we want to take you on the journey that we actually went on through many, many years and in order to kind of like get all the learnings and understand how to improve it for ourselves.
Yeah, like with our business, we're trying to get down to the fundamentals of what makes things great, like what makes greatness basically. And um, when we thought of it at an individual level, an individual like you're always making decisions, right? Like us, the individual level is we're choosing, right? We have freedom to choose. We have responsibility over our lives, over our decisions, and so we're just always making choices, moving in certain directions, right? And my mentor even used to say, she was really cool. She said, "Look, life is the art of making decisions, making
I love
choices."
that.
You know?
That's like so poetic, right?
Yeah. And apparently, it's a Chinese quote, and
A
so
proverb?
a Chinese proverb. Yeah, a Chinese proverb. So for me, it used to be that I would stumble a lot when it came to big decisions. It was like they would just hit me, and I would like really stress out, couldn't sleep about certain things, and it was almost like I was used to walking, and suddenly there's a wall that I need to climb, and I look back and I'm like, well, I've only practiced walking. I've only practiced simple decisions. When a hard one comes, I would like really panic actually, not even knowing that that's what was happening. Like any challenge that you're having in your life, at the end of the day, is decisions. You need to make a decision. Like something happened, you need to adapt. And so we then started on a journey that we looked into the books and the research. And people have written about this for years. So how is that done?
First, I want to actually talk about like responsibility. It's just such a powerful word, and I think we've maybe as a society warped a little bit the meaning of it. And I kind of want to go back to the roots, right? Like if you think about the word, and this is not my own discovery. We learned this from somebody else who's um, very advanced, let's just say. And he was saying how the root of the word is response and ability, right? The ability to respond. So sometimes when we think of responsibility as like all of the ownership that you have over something or the task that you have to do, it's not quite that. I know societally we've changed it, but actually it's your ability to respond, right? And so if you think of it from that lens, actually everything is within your responsibility. You are responsible for everything. And it sounds crazy, right? But you are able to respond to everything that's happening to you. And not only able, but you are responding. So sometimes when something happens, let's say a fight breaks out in front of you, right? Two people just start going at it. Even if you walk by and don't do anything, that is your response in the given situation. If you choose to intervene, that is another response. If you choose to call the police, that's yet another response. So all of these are within your ability to do. So you have the responsibility over every situation that's happening in your life.
And one of the things that we learned is that our responses could be actually very subtle, like maybe something's happening on the other side of the world. You have no way to help or control it or anything like that, but you might respond with fear. And really, is that something that like you could respond with love, or you could respond with hope, or you could respond with faith, other things that are, and you have the ability to choose. There's a freedom into not being when there's a stimulus coming to you, something happened on the other side of the world, and you see in the news, for example, there is a freedom that you have into, well, how am I going to respond? And like that, for us, it was like, oh my God, he's right. Like we can respond to like everything is our responsibility. And I remember as a man, that shifted me into a position of real empowerment, that I felt like, oh, I can choose. I'm not a victim in any situation. I'm actually an actor in every situation. I can act in certain ways. I can respond in certain ways. And my life really started to shift just with this basic realization, right?
Do you want to maybe share the example of like how you started to apply this knowledge in your work and in your life?
I remember there were certain situations that were a little bit disempowering, This happens to all of us, right? Like, for example, like we're working in a place, there's limited resources, there's not enough money, or you need something in your job, but it's dependent on someone else, And I remember when I first learned this, I really just went to a park and I sat down and I'm like, well, what's bothering me? And all of these things were bothering me. And I know it's not, maybe everybody does this, I don't know, but I remember thinking, well, what can I actually do? Like, not what is the perfect outcome that I'm expecting or looking for, but are there things that I can actually do that would shift me into this more, because how am I going to respond to these things? Like, I don't have enough resources. Well, how am I going to respond? And it was interesting. Some of the things I was like, well, I'm just going to let them go. I'm not going to be bothered by them anymore. I was like, at least I'm choosing not to be bothered, as opposed to just it being in the back of my head. And there were other things that were actually really significant that I was like, well, is there a way around? We don't have enough. I remember specifically the resources one, right? We didn't have enough money to hire a marketing firm. And I'm like, well, I could just hire interns, and they could help us. And I remember having a blast, a really, really great time. I felt like I helped these young adults, well, younger than me, to have the first step in their career. I was mentoring them as much as I can. I gave them as much value as I could, and at the same time, the problem got fixed. So I don't know. I just feel like it. Understanding that everything is my responsibility. It's like radical responsibility. Everything is my responsibility. What am I going to do about something? Just liberated me. Liberated me to just make a whole bunch of choices that I was, for some reason, I was procrastinating on. And that was it. Like, I don't know if that's the.
Yeah. That's cool, because it's a very empowering mindset once you embrace it. Because when you feel like it's within your responsibility, it's within your, let's say, control, that means you can do something about it, right? And so we're gonna share with you a little bit more of like a few, I guess, key steps that we've learned later on, but just want to call that out, that like you can do things about it, and it's very cool.
And it is in the present. It's like, what can you do right now, right? Even if you have a plan for the future, there's certain, and this actually leads us to the next part, which is we discovered that the way our body works is that there are different layers to how you respond to things. So on the first layer, you're kind of like doing. I remember reading this book and it explained it really well. You're doing things, right? There's something that needs to get done. And to us, we feel like, well, once we do this, we will then get our reward. This is kind of like how it appears to us. Like, I'm gonna, get a car, and then I'm gonna start to feel happy about myself because I have a car, or I'm gonna feel excited or whatever. And it is true that is how in life things appear. But in this book, it was saying like, actually, you are a very creative person. You can create, you have the power to choose. It kind of like, it's funny because it piggybacked almost on this like response thing. I remember it came and it was like, well, you actually could choose to feel the excitement and feel happy even before you have the car. You can choose to feel excited and happy actually while you're walking in the street, and that's still a mode of transport. You're using your legs, maybe not as advanced as like a Ferrari, but it's still, you're going from A to B. So the book was saying, hey, why don't you start to feel some of the feelings that you want with that car right away, as you are traveling in the way that you're traveling right now.
I just want to share the most radical example for me of this was something that you did, which was there was a time when excuse me, sorry.
There's someone.
Yeah, let me grab some water. Okay. We didn't do our la 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 la.
Yeah, normally we practice them for the videos.
It's too early in the morning. But essentially, just one really cool example of this was, I think it was in the book that it was mentioned maybe, or you came up with it yourself. It was, even if you're feeling poor, giving money away to, let's say, homeless people. And it was very, very interesting because it wasn't so much about the action at all. Not at all. Because you could give money to the homeless person and feel like, oh crap, I'm giving away my last dollar, right? And that's a really, really negative thing that's almost going to take you further away from it. But if you are able to enter this place of abundance, this place of, I have so much that I can give away for the joy of it, or you don't have to give it away, but it's just more that deeper feeling that starts to shift everything. And we talk about more of this stuff much later on in our process, but just to kind of tease it a little bit, because it's just such a life-changing philosophy. At least for us it was.
For me it was, I started to think, oh my God, like just change my perspective. For example, instead of, there's all of these things I don't have, because these days you can see online what other people are having and stuff. I started to think, oh my God, actually I'm living, like, look at everything I have. Like, it's...
Yeah, compared to like the olden ages, you're living like a king.
I kept saying, like, I'm living better than kings in the past, but that's still a comparison. I mean, it was just this general feeling of like, look, there's a chair, look, there's this. I mean, what are the... I just discovered the very, 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 very basics of everything that I could ever want. I'm already having them. Everything else is just a gift, and even those things are a gift. Because I remember when I was learning to meditate with a Zen master in this is a different story, okay? But I remember thinking, oh my God, I'm sitting here looking at a wall like for 10 hours a day, and I think I'm as happy as I could be. So everything else is just a gift, Yeah.
So we want to share with you guys a bit of a framework, or what we discovered that you can start implementing, for your own decisions, because it will just help you understand like the path. What we started to do is we started to research, okay, well, how can we make better decisions? Because to Jesus' point earlier, when he was talking about like there'd be certain decisions that would really that we'd stumble over, right? We'd not be able to come up with the right way. And so we started looking deeper and deeper into this. And the first thing we came across was, it was actually the body of work of Viktor Frankl, who is an Austrian, I think, what is he, a neurologist and a psychologist?
Psychiatrist, I think.
Psychiatrist or psychologist, sorry, we're not 100%
We'll research
sure.
that again, yeah.
And essentially, he's very well known for his book, A Man's Search for Meaning. So if you haven't read that, it's a really, really powerful book. And his body of work, the essence of what he came up with through his own observations, life experiences, and professional experience, is summarized by a quote, which I think I have. Yeah, I do have here. So I want to read it to you because I want to get it right. It says, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. And so the first thing that we kind of like recommend, let's say we'll make you guys a list. So the first thing you want to do is expand the space. Before taking any decision, you want to expand that space that he's talking about.
This is very simple. Like, there are people that are talking about techniques like meditation or just sitting in in stillness. For us, or for me, sometimes it's as simple as, okay, there's a big decision. I'm just gonna go for a long walk, and it's not even about thinking the decision through, because that already is, you are reacting because there's something that happened and you feel like you need to do something. No, it's just I'm gonna go for a walk until I feel just kind of like grounded, centered, and myself again, natural, until, because I might have lost my center, and so this is the space that he's talking about, is, something happened in your life, and before you take action, you get used to just coming back to, grounding yourself, coming back to your center, coming back to just be who you are. Sometimes you require a fast response, or it feels like you do, but I've noticed in many situations, that's still a trick. Actually, there's many times that you can respond, you can take time. take time to recenter yourself before you react to something. So this expanding the space, very important.
And I think this is a really powerful insight also when you are in an argument, right? I think a lot of times like we get caught up and it's almost like we're not even there. It's like this autopilot thing is happening, right? And as soon as you can become aware, as soon as you realize and you come back to the present moment, that's that little space, right? And at first it's like the tiniest little hairline almost of a space, right? But as you start to do some of these other practices, this is why a lot of people recommend meditation and mindfulness practices, is because you are almost like training your mind a little bit. But even without those practices, if you just start to notice in those moments as soon as it happens and almost give yourself a little bit of room, it's like you are expanding that space. And so instead of the next things out of your mouth, let's say during that argument being the autopilot response, by expanding, you can come back and choose. Again, that's why this is part of the decision making, because you have a choice and you can exercise that freedom of choice in that moment, which a lot of times when we've done, it's radically shifted the outcome from the trajectory that it was on to a completely different trajectory that's always 100 times better, right?
Yeah, super cool. The second one, I'm just gonna write it down, is work with your physiology. Work with your physiology.
This is my favorite one because I love to ask this question. And before you give even your response, I'm gonna give the standard response. So the question is, how many brains do we have? Think about it.
How many brains do we have?
Yes. So for most people, the answer is usually just one, right? The one that's in your head. But what's your answer?
I thought it was 2. Well, it turns out it's 3. Okay.
So we've got 3 brains. And now, if you just don't look at the location of the definition, right? And just think about what are the defining qualities of a brain, right? Well, it's a mass of neurons, right? It's kind of like something that can operate as a center of a nervous system, which has chemical and electrical communication between itself and other parts of the body. And then also a brain is a center for learning, storing memories, using complex thought processes and dynamic thought processes. So if you look at all of those definitions, by those definitions we have 3 brains. One in the head, another one here in the heart, and another one in the gut, right? So what does that mean? Why is this part of our decision-making, framework, I guess? It's because you have information coming from many more places than just up here. And a lot of times we haven't really learned how to interpret the signals from here or from here. And so we either disregard it entirely, or we almost start to feel more uneasy because of those signals.
I remember, for example, talking to one of my friends, and he's telling us about a problem, a decision he has to make. And I can see that he is activating his brain, right? Like the mass of neurons that's around here. And so he's coming with all sorts of rational explanations, right? But whenever I ask him, yes, but how do you feel? Which is still, think of this, it's still information. It's still things that you are aware of, right? And then he'd be like, he'd navigate the question rationally. He'd say, well, obviously I feel frustrated because blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I was looking at him, I'm like, he doesn't feel frustrated. You can see how people feel in their body by just looking at them. I'm like, he's actually not feeling frustrated. And so I kept saying, like, are you really? You feel? And he had to literally pause, which this pause allowed him to expand the space. And then he says, I actually feel fine about it. I'm like, there's actually no problem. And then it's almost like he surprised himself, like his mind was on automatic going in one direction, whereas actually in his body here, he felt completely fine. And I said, well, do you still want to make the decision? He's like, no, there's no decision to make. I'm done, you know? Yeah.
So what we want to do is, however we start making decisions, you want to become conscious of your physiology, and you want to learn to work with it such that you are making, because we say improve the quality of the decisions, right? So you need to use all of the information at your disposal. And actually, there's been a lot of, like, a huge body of research that's emerging more recently around the gut, right? Because before we didn't really understand how the gut works, what are these, like, how it functions. And lately, there's been a lot of studies to test, is it like this, is it like this? And we're figuring out that the gut is, firstly, a massively powerful, almost like processing machine, right? If you think about it, man, I can't remember the exact number, but I think it's like only 0.0005% of the stimuli coming in. So everything that our eyes are getting, are the sounds, the touch, the sensory stimuli and inputs, from all of those, only 0.005% are processed consciously, which is in your head. Everything else is processed below the level of consciousness. And often, like now we're seeing that it actually is processed in the gut. And so what that means is you have this very powerful engine that you don't yet know how to use fully, but you need to start to explore, because there's so much that the gut can do. Do you want to give the tennis example?
The tennis example, yeah, I can give the tennis example. It's just something that another one of my friends said. It's like when you're playing tennis, if you had to calculate all of the mathematics behind actually hitting a ball, you'd last days. I mean, like just to hit one ball, to calculate all the physics,
hours.
you know, or hours, like just to calculate the physics of how to do it. But our body does that intuitively, you know. The subconscious mind is if you think about it as a machine, it's this huge machine, so much more powerful than what we can do with our rational thought. You know, with a rational thought, it takes us, you know,
and it's much faster. It's much faster, and it is precise if you know how to use it. So this is what we started to really explore, and this is what we teach.
The thing is, like in school, nobody teaches how to work with your gut. For example, like what do you do when you get a gut feeling? Like, I'm like, I didn't know. It was confusing sometimes, because sometimes it's like, well, I think I should do one thing, but my gut is telling me another, and I feel all over the place. You know, you have this incoherence, and we want to turn that into a coherence, almost like a system, a way that you can just work with it. And so we haven't come up with the actual knowledge, the knowledge we've researched. What we've come up is with an actual sort of like a systemic way to deal with. Systemic means that you can just do it again and again and again. It's going to work every single time, you know. So every time you get a gut feeling, oh, I know what that is. I know how to name it. I know what to do with it. You get a feeling, oh, I know what this is. I know how to name it. I know what to do with it. And it's just like pam, pam, pam. Like you follow it like a formula. But what's important is not the formula, it's not the system. It's that you get mastery over your natural process. What's important is that you're having natural information, in real data, coming in from your gut, coming in from your heart, coming in from your brain, and you're observing, you're expanding the space because you're observing all of this, and then making choices, making decisions, making better decisions from it. That it's a natural, it's you working with what you already have, with your natural process. It's not learning some theory. That's not the important part. The important part is that you, just like you know how to use your hands, that you know how to use your gut, you know how to use your heart, you know how to use your brain. This is super simple, and it's completely basic. And it's just like it is the baseline into making a better life, because you're making decisions all the time, you know?
Very cool. So the last thing, we're gonna give you the last tip, is figure out what's online. What do we mean by this?
So this one is super important, because you're getting down to what we call the level of belief. You know, the level of belief is like, what do I truly believe in? Like when your gut, your heart, your brain, like they're all connected to like core. At the core, there are certain beliefs about. It's just the structures that your mind has formed around like what you think is true. You know, what do you think is true for you, right? Like not the ultimate truth, but the truth that you are living by. Be is your belief is like being, and living, is like what you're living by. And so you start to realize that, and I mean, this happened to us. Oh, I've got a whole bunch of beliefs, which is completely normal, that are coming from childhood, or are coming from culture, or are coming from history, from your family, or from school, that some of them are essential for you to function, and some of them, they were very important when you were 5 years old. They're not as important now that you're 30, 40, 60, They're just not, wherever you are, it's not as important. Or some that you've created without even knowing. It's like you've had some experiences, and now you thought, well, it's always going to be like this, so I'm going to root a core belief and I'm going to act based on this. And when I told you I went to the park and I wrote that, it's almost like you need to do this sort of like, okay, what beliefs are playing in my mind? And the important thing is, like, do I want them or not? Like, you're free to choose which ones are governing your subconscious mind. And so you can sort of like audit them a little bit and see which ones are serving you, which ones are not serving you. You can start to do this process,
What's important is that this freedom of choice that we're talking about, and what Jesus is just saying, only happens right now, in this present moment. That's it. You can't influence the past. You can't change the future. You only have this moment right now. And this is where that freedom comes in. And so what happens, just to elaborate further on what Jesus was saying, is, for example, when you're a child, let's say, and maybe you're a child in a big family and you weren't getting a lot of attention, and something, you weren't comfortable and you weren't able to communicate, no one was listening to you, so you had to cry. And when you cried, the attention went on you, right? So you realized, hey, that behavior is serving me in this context, but you didn't put that in this context. You just decided, hey, this behavior is serving me. So then you start to grow up, whenever you really needed something, you'd cry. And then it just associated this thing. And so now you have this pattern that always plays out. And unless you, in this moment right now, evaluate and see, is it still serving me? Is this how I want to behave? Is this what I want my being to be like? Then you can choose. Otherwise, it's like a default pathway. And we talk a little bit about neuroplasticity, which is a phenomenon that your brain molds depending on what's happening around you, what it needs, etc. It's more complicated than that. But essentially, you have pathways that you've treaded for so many years that it becomes like a superhighway, right? And if you want to create a new path, the first time you do something new, it's like you literally have to pull weeds out of a forest to make a little path, right? The second time you do it, well, now it's like the ground you stomped on, now it looks like, now you can see there's an actual path. Maybe by the 5th or 6th or 10th time, you start to put little pebbles around so that the weeds don't grow back. And only after years and years, because if you've done something from childhood, that's many years of your life. So only after years can you create a road or even a highway. So it's just something to keep in the back of your mind. It is a challenging process. It's not always easy, but you can start right now and keep choosing in this moment.
What's going to happen is, if we are, just to bring it all together, if we are in a reactive mindset, which means we're not responsible, we're like, we haven't realized that we're responsible for everything, etc., then as life hits you, you're going to then change your paths, and you might do a disservice to yourself, because you might change it in a way that's just not good. When you realize, no, I'm responsible for everything, I have power, and I can just literally today, right now, you can just sit here and start to think, okay, well, what do I believe it? What do I want to believe it? You can start to create like a little, have this feeling of almost like a bonsai. Think of your brain as like a tree. It has ramifications, right? When we look at branches, when we look at pictures of the brain, think of broccoli, like it kind of looks like that. It's just like branches. This is your bonsai. This is a beautiful and amazing machine that you have. It's the most powerful thing on the planet. And it's yours to kind of like shape and move around. And there is certain thoughts, feelings, gut feelings that you can start shaping, getting all the way to the core of like what you actually believe in, that with your own freedom to choose, you can start kind of shaping. And it's like the ultimate, we were thinking to call it like the path of freedom. It's like now you are free to, at least
Within your own sovereignty.
within your own body, within your own thoughts, you could at least not be reactive, and you could actually be responsible for what you are. You have the ability to respond in any way that you want. This is your ultimate freedom. Nobody can take this part away from you, for sure. And so we encourage you that you start shaping.
And in the meantime, if you want to learn more, you can always check out our website, wearevia.co.